Alright, what I'd like to do first is just take a couple minutes to review what we did yesterday. And I'm hoping, the question was asked before class, is yours working? Does your emulator work, etc.? Well, if I do a run app, it should. That's the best thing I can tell you. But like I said, I'd rather take a few minutes and make sure we're all, for lack of better words, on the same page. While this is getting ready, one thing I want to tell you, again, I've said this to you before, I'm going to say it again. That is, please be thinking about what kind of an app you'd like to do. And regardless of what that app is, I'd start going out to the Google Play Store and see if there's one out there that is similar to what it is you're trying to do. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. What I don't want to have happen is I don't want you to submit somebody else's work. I want this to be your own work. But if you take something that someone else has done, and if you can get a hold of the source and make modifications to it, etc., I wouldn't really have a problem with that. There are all sorts of, as you already know, probably better than I do, that there are all sorts of very good resources out there that you can use. You can Google stuff, you can do basically whatever. All right. But if you find something that's out there on the web that you think you can use, that's fine. Then just go out there and use it. I don't have any kind of problem with that. All right. See if this thing loads up now, and if it does, how it looks. I mentioned to you, and this doesn't affect any of you, but it does me, and since I'm projecting up here, in a way it at least indirectly affects you, that I was down to having only 3 gig left on here. Mike Stacey, who is over there next door, he's the new Ryan for a few weeks. All right. He was looking at my machine and he said something's goofy because we went into Task Manager and it was like, typically when you're running system at anything running, maybe if you look at your RAM, it'll be 20, 30, 40%. Mine was at 86.9%. We can't figure out what it is, but something that's there is started to move stuff around to different drives and whatever, trying to see if I can get it to work better. All right. Is that going to work? I don't have a clue. I hope so. But I'll tell you what, as I'm waiting for this to hopefully do something, because it's not doing much right now, like I said, I'd like to go over what we went over, or what we talked about yesterday. So we started out, and I do want to mention, because I made a couple changes to mine, if you look up on the screen here. Mine was originally 36 up here. Jeez Louise. Mine was originally 36, and again, I don't know why, but I always forget the difference between SP and DP. All right, but mine was 36. I cut it down to 30. Why? So that when this thing does run, ideally at least, what's going to happen when this thing runs is you're going to be able to see the entire keyboard over here. All right. The keyboard was somewhat covering up these icons when you ran it at 36. Now, is that big a thing? Well, you want your app to look as professional as possible. And again, that's my hope, is when you get up here and you're explaining to me and whomever I can bring in to look at yours, that it's going to look as professional as you can make it look. Remember, one of the reasons that I'm having you do this at the end of the semester is you're on stage, so to speak. You can kind of look at it, in a way at least, as being like an interview. All right, because you have potential employers out there, at least that's my hope. We'll get some potential employers out there and they'll be able to see what you've done. You'll be able to go through I would recommend going through your portfolio first, explaining what you did. Now, I really don't want 8 of you to come up here and go, first we took the AWD1112 class. In that class, we learned the following. I mean, that would be kind of silly to hear that 8 times. All right. But whoever goes first, you might want to do that a little bit. And then if other people have things they want to add, fine. If they don't, also fine. All right. So what we did was we came up and first we just very simply added a text view up here. And we talked about using constraints. You can see these squiggly lines up here. All right. We kept the actual constraint layout, as you can see. When you have that constraint layout, again, if you take your mouse and you double click on whatever it is you're working on, you get this if you look up on the screen here. This is called a lot of different things. Some people call it the pin menu because you're able to pin things in a certain way. What we said here for this right here was we wanted it to be 10 units from the top, and that's that little bit of space you see right there, and 0 from the left and right. What that meant was, what this would do in a constrained layout is that it would center it right there. Not only is it centered there, but as I showed you yesterday, if we go and we switch from portrait to landscape, it's still centered. All right, and that's the main idea, and that's the reason that many people like to use the constrained layout. All right, because it gives you, you can look at it that either it gives you more control or it gives you less control over what you're working on. All right, so we put that in first. Then after that, we came in and we added here, we added an edit text. We took the text out of it and we put in some hint text. So when this weather app runs, what this should say is example, Wentzville, Missouri. All right. And eventually we hope to get that to the point where we put in a city rather. We can in probably a state, but so if we put in there Wentzville, Missouri, we click the Get Forecast button, then on our other screen, it'll show a 10-day forecast. That's what we're working towards. All right. So after we did that, and of course we named this, so we changed the name to Textview Title. We changed the name of this to Edit Text City. All right. And then our button, we called it Button Get Forecast. Why? Because if you look at the text on it, it says Get Forecast. All right. So that was the idea behind that. All right. We pinned all of these. So basically they were centered, and we also set each one of these so there were 10 units of measurement between each one. A little bit of symmetry, whatever it is you want to call it. All right. Then after we did all that, and we put in the text view and the edit text and the button, we went out to flaticon.com. We grabbed 3 SVG scalable vector graphic icons, and we copied them to our desktop. After we copied those to our desktop, we went up here to our layout menu right there. All right. We right mouse clicked and chose new. Wasn't layout, I'm sorry. It was in drawable. We went to our drawable, we right mouse clicked, we chose new, and we went down to vector asset. That's how we were able to bring those in. All right. What that did, by right mouse clicking on our drawable folder, going to new and vector assets, it brought us up to this. And we went into local file, that copied in our 3 different SVG files. The reason that was important was after we had those, then we came in here, and I'm going to remove it right away, but we went in and added an image view, and I'm going to remove that one, but that made sure that the flash, my thing of lightning, the sun, and the whatever the other one was, the snowflake, those were now available. All right. After we did that, we came in and set up the sizing on these. Now, what I showed you yesterday was actually correct. And what I mean is, if you look on here, that is how you were, I set up the snowflake so that it was 10 units away, all right, etc. from the other one. Then I tried to come in here, and if you take your mouse in here and you put it at the little dot on the top, you can see how it changes color. And I dragged up to the top here, and I tried to do the same thing here, but it wouldn't let me do it for whatever reason. But I wanted it to go and do the same thing, so it was on the top right there. Yes. And the idea behind those was now we can use that as one cohesive unit. And if you move any one of them, the other two will move as well. That was the idea behind that. So we did all that stuff. All right? Okay. Then once we did that, we came in. Again, if you look, this is more for those of you who weren't here or fell behind yesterday. So then what we did was we went up to right here, which is the folder that held our original activity. We right mouse clicked on that folder, went to New, went to Activity, and went to Empty Activity. All right? Why? So we could add a second activity. All right? And what that second activity was meant to do, all right, was, and this is it right here, and there's really not anything in it yet, all right? I don't have anything in it at all, but the idea was that was going to hold our list view. So again, on the first page, what you just saw, that was the opening screen. When you click the Get Forecast button, that was supposed to come up to this page, all right? Now, I had problems with this yesterday, all right, but hopefully at least they'll be fixed now. So I'm going to Containers, I'm going to List View, and I'm going to drag that out. Okay, it put in the list view. All right. Now, if I want to, I can double click on the list view and do the pinning again. You'll notice that this is set to 8. This is, I think they're all set to 8, to be honest with you. So that's giving me a real little bit of border all the way around them. If you don't want to do that, you could go back and manually set those to 0. But there really is no reason to do that. All right, it would be fine to do it. But one thing I should do is this is a list view. So I'm going to change the name of it. What did I say I wanted to call it? List View Forecast, because that's what it's going to hold. All right, so I now have that in, and if you look on the screen, the list view is kind of a weird, quirky little thing, and what I mean is sometimes this stuff here will show, and sometimes it won't. And if yours doesn't show, don't let that worry you, because typically after you run it once, then it'll show after that. All right. But the idea, again, is when we come in here and we click on our first, so when we click on this one and we click Get Forecast, we should be coming into here. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. You can use list views for a lot of things. Think about how you could write something. And if Amin says to me, yeah, that's what I plan on doing for mine, fine. But let's assume that Amin has 10 people, 10 singing groups or individual people that he really likes. So on his main page, he's got some kind of a welcome screen. Boom, you click a button or whatever, and you go to a list view that's got his 10 favorite entertainers. Okay? Then you click on one of those entertainers, it opens up another screen with information just about that entertainer. Maybe their 10 top albums or whatever it happens to be. All right? And then he might even have something where you can click on there and you can get the lyrics to what his favorite song from there or something like that. That would be fine. All right? So there's a lot of different ways this can be used. The big thing about a list view like this, just so you hear this, the big thing about a list view is the list view, yeah, it doesn't just hold lists, but typically it gets its information from some kind of data source. That could be a database, that could be an array, that could be a list. It makes sense that a list view might hold a list. All right, so you can basically put almost any kind of thing that you want to put in there. All right? Okay. You're going to see that in just a minute. Okay? So, and that's kind of where I left it off yesterday. So I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to go to my forecastactivity.kt file, which currently has nothing in it other than the stuff the system provides for you. All right? And the first thing I want to do is I want to get a reference to that list view. All right? Again, as you just saw, I called mine Listview Forecast. If you called yours something else, then you're going to have to change your code when I put mine in. All right? Now, it's up to you. I'm just going to call this thing right here, I'm going to just say var Listview, and I'm going to say equals, you've seen this kind of thing before, find view by ID. All right, what are we going to find? Well, it's going to be a list view. And what's it called? r.id. And it's the forecast. I guess it's list view forecast. All right. And there we go. After I typed everything in, you may or may not have noticed, if you look up on the screen here, somehow this kicked in by itself. The import android.widget.listview. And it filled it in for me. All right. So what this is, and you don't have to put this in unless you want to, this is get a reference to the list view. That's what that's doing. I want to make sure you understand that. All right. What this means literally is it's telling the system to go into this R file. That R file contains a list of addresses in memory where this stuff exists. And it's telling it to find that address, and it's telling it it's a list view, and it's telling it to stick it into that variable. That may make a lot of sense to you. That may make no sense to you whatsoever. All right? Now, what we want to do, Tiffany just asked a question about scrolling and the like. Right now, if we run this, nothing's going to show because there's nothing in there yet. So I'm going to answer your question, but it'll take 2 steps to answer your question. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, and for right now, I'm going to even put a comment in here that says test data. So I'm just going to put some test stuff in there. What does that mean? It means later I could comment it out. I could remove it. It doesn't matter. But this is just some test data. That's all it's going to be. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say var. You've seen me do this many times. I'm going to say family members equals, and I'm going to put in here list of. All right. And I'm just going to put the people in my family. Again, you can put anything you want in here. You can put one thing in there. You can put many things in there. It really and truly isn't going to matter in the end. All right? Cut that down a little bit so you can see all of it. Okay? And of course, I'm missing some of my code. I don't think so. Anything's possible. Maybe you're right. That seemed to fix it. Okay. All right. We'll see as we go on because I goofed up. All right. So what that did is that's just some test data. All right. Now we're going to create an array adapter. All right. And what that array adapter is going to do is to have the test data show up in the list view. That's the idea behind setting up the array adapter. I want that data to appear in the list view. Now, when we first do it, we're not going to have any scrolling. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and copy these things and put them in there about 5 or 6 times. And as soon as I do, it'll automatically have the scrolling capability in there for me. All right? Now, this is going to be an array adapter. I'm going to literally say var adapter All right. Equals new array adapter. All right. When you do this, okay, when you come in here and do this, it needs certain information. The first thing it needs is what's known as the context. And there's different ways that you can put it in there. The good news is you already know how to specify context, even if you don't think you do. You can just put in the word this, which is pretty nice, because then you don't have to call a function to like get your application context or whatever. You can do that, but there really is no reason to do that. All right? All right, so that's the first thing that you want to put in there. Then you have to put in the type of resource that you want to create. And I'm going to type in here Android.r.layout.simple list item 1. And you might look at that and go, I have absolutely no idea what the heck that is. What this right here represents, this, everything that you see right there, it represents this. It says show it as a regular list view. That's all it means. There's nothing special about that except that that's the context in which they expect you to do it. And why doesn't it like that? List view, which is fine. That's fine too. All right, the last thing we have to show in here is what is it that we want to show. I call this up here family members, so that's what I want to show in there is family members. So in English, what this is saying right here is I want you to grab this stuff that you see in blue on your screen, and when the program runs, I want you to put it in here. Does that all make sense? All right. Much of the stuff that you end up doing in here, after you do a bit of it, it isn't so much that it's hard. All right. It's not so much that it's hard, but it's, wow, I haven't done anything quite kind of like that before. Yeah, because it's different. Create abstract property new, create local property new, reference, create property new. You don't? Okay.
Simple list item underscore 1.
Thank you. All right, so fix yours so it looks like this. Get rid of the word new, so don't say new array adapter, and make it simple underscore list underscore item underscore 1. All right. Now, we've done all that, but if you run it, it's still not going to work. All right, if you run it right now, it still will not work. Why? Because we have to add one more line of code. All right, we have to say Listview, which is what we just created, Listview dot adapter equals adapter. And in English, what that means is grab this thing that we just created that's called adapter and make that the adapter that's used for our list view. Does that make sense? All right. It may make a lot of sense when you are running through your own program, whatever it is you happen to do. Please don't write tons of lines of code and then test it. Write a little bit, comment it, test it. And don't be afraid to leave your comments in there if you want to do that. All right? Now, I'm going to do a file, save all. I'm going to go back to my activity main. I have no idea if it's going to run, but I'm going to try to run this. Most of you yesterday were having more luck getting your things to run than I was. All right. this is the message I was getting yesterday. Cold boot. No, this isn't the one. This is after I did the cold boot. But this should be coming up. But yesterday I waited for about 10 or more minutes and it never came up. I don't want to waste your time while you look on the screen hoping that this thing comes up. So again, hopefully yours did come up, and hopefully when it came up and you clicked on the Get Forecast button, it went to the other screen, and when it went to the other screen, you saw the 5 family members that were in there in the list view. All right? Because mine still says it's running. It's really taking a long time. If it is going to run, it's just taking a long time before it is. All right? Let's assume for a second, if you look up on the screen here, let's assume that you did all that stuff. Okay? So let's assume you did all that stuff and it worked. So you had your opening screen, you clicked your Get Forecast button, it went to the other screen, and you've got the 5 names. Everybody with me? All right. Then, if you look up on the screen here, I'm going to come into my code that's right here, and I'm going to put in a comma here, and then I'm going to come in and grab all of that stuff I just put in right there, copy it to the clipboard, and I'm going to paste it in 5 or 6 times. A lot more than we need, but you get the idea. All right? So I pasted it in a bunch of times, and then at the end I'm going to get rid of that comma and put in that. Okay? Now, I'm looking at mine and it looks funky, so somehow screwed up my parens. There we go. But if you do that where you've got a bunch of stuff in here like this, then if you save it and you run it again, what should happen once you save it and run it again is now you should see a bunch of names, but you should have, you may or may not be able to tell, but scroll capability where you can go up and down with it. All right? Now, do you always need that? It depends on what it is you're trying to do. All right? A list view could conceivably hold hundreds of thousands of things, or it might hold just 2 or 3. Depends on what it is you're trying to do with it. All right? I'm going to come in and try to do a clean on mine and a rebuild and rebuild my APK and run it one more time. Just because, again, I'm having all these problems with it. All right. Let me, if you would, please look up on the screen. I want to show you what we're going to do next. All right. And it's right there. Come on. Oh, that's fantastic. I had all my links set, and now everything is just gone. Wow. All right. So let's start by doing this. I'm going to type in this. What is an API? All right. I've given you my definition before of an API, an application program interface. And I'm going to add to it. I'm not saying that what I told you is wrong, because it isn't. I said it's kind of a contract between you, the software you're creating, and other software, where the other software that you're using says, hey, you can use me, but you have to agree to use me in the way I want to be used, and I'm supposed to be used. All right? And that is correct. Now, I found this online, and this is one of the links I had that for whatever reason isn't showing anymore, but that's fine. And they talked in here about what an API is. What I kind of liked about it, and if you want, you can go in and you can watch this. It's a 3-minute YouTube video. It's fine. But I kind of like the way they explained it here. Okay? What they said was, look at it this way. You walk into a restaurant, okay? And it's a nicer restaurant. So there happen to be menus on the table already. You open up a menu and you find out what you want. Okay? Chances are you don't sit there and at the top of your lungs shout it out so somebody in the kitchen hears you. All right? Chances are pretty good, if it's a halfway decent restaurant, they'll have a waiter or a waitress who will come in and take your order. And so this is what the author talks about in here. It says, imagine you're at a table in a restaurant with a menu of choices to choose from. The kitchen is part of the system that prepares your order. What's missing is the critical link that communicates your order to the kitchen. All right, that's where the waiter comes in. So the waiter is taking the place of the API in this case. All right, that's not the greatest of definitions, but it kind of shows what's happening. What we want to be able to do is we want to be able to do this. For example, if I type in this, 10-day forecast for Wentzville, Missouri. If I type that in, notice I get 112,000 results. Okay? And I'm looking at the first one right here, and it says weather.com, which probably is a pretty good place to go look at it. So I'm going to just click that link, and in a nutshell, this is pretty much what we're going to want to have come up on ours. So if we put in Wentzville, Missouri, this is pretty much what we're going to want to see. But we'll add a little bit more than that. We'll add the day, all right, and the date, okay, and we'll have the high and the low and a real little thing like a description like partly cloudy or whatever. Does that make sense? That's what we're going to shoot for, all right? The problem is this isn't in any kind of format right now. This is in no kind of format where we could go in and look at it and be able to use it directly. We can't pull this information out directly and use it. It's not in a format that Kotlin or we are going to be able to use. All right. But if we go back and again look, and I type in 10-day forecast for Wentzville, Missouri, you know, I could have just came in here and typed in weather forecast, right? Forgetting about, for a second, just forgetting all about where it is. And if I do that, notice now I get 124 million results. In other words, there's a lot of them. Okay? And I'm going to come back in here. Now I'm going to change that to weather forecast API. All right? And you'll notice now it's down to 1.43 million of these. All right? And there's a lot of them. Okay? One of them, I'm surprised it's not on the first page. It was when I tried it earlier, but that's okay. And I'm going to put in here Yahoo. All right? This is the one we're going to end up using, Yahoo Developer Network. All right? So when I click on that, what you may or may not notice if you take a look up on the screen right here is it's going to give us a bunch of information right there. All right? Now that information's in a really nice format. You may or may not agree with that, but the information as it is in a really nice format. What do I mean? I'm going to highlight all of this. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, and I'm going to come in here and type in pretty JSON. All right, and I'll just use the first one, JSON formatter and validator. Now I'm going to take that stuff I just put in there, and I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to tell it to process it. All right, it comes up, and it shows it like that, but the actual data itself, what I did was I took a pretty format and put it into a pretty format. But if I come in here and put in a brand new, the data itself is in a really raw format. What we're going to have to do is this, and please look up on the screen. We got a query. Inside of that query will be a whole bunch of other stuff. In other words, we want to go and dig all the way down till we get to this thing that says forecast. Forecast is inside of something, which is inside of something, which is inside about 5 or 6 layers deep. So we've got to go down about 5 or 6 layers. Then we're going to grab the date. We're going to grab the day. We're going to grab the high. We're going to grab the low. Whoops. And we're going to grab the text. In other words, the only thing we're not using is the code, because the code happens to go along with that picture. So if it's cloudy, it's going to put in a picture of clouds, etc. All right, I got it to work, but not with using the images. So I'm leaving the code out. Okay, so we're going to want all this stuff to show when we get done. That's going to be our goal. All right. Now, to do that, even that, to go back here to where I just showed you this, and take all this stuff that you see right here and be able to go play with it and put all those changes in, that's a lot of work. It's not that you can just, say, hey, do this, then do this. No, there's a lot of work that has to be done behind the scenes. So we're going to do that in just a minute. Before we do, I want to show you something else. Okay, so this is where we were. Okay, I grabbed that data that you saw originally, this data. Okay, this thing, all the stuff that was in here. And notice it even creates for you a URL. See that URL right here? So I'm going to grab that URL that you see down here. You don't have to do this. But I'm going to grab that URL. I'm going to paste it in. And I'm going to hit enter. That's the data. That's what it all looks like. That's JSON data. I can't read that. Maybe you can. All right. I'm going to grab all of that data, and I'm going to go back into this JSON formatter. Now I'm going to paste in all that garbage and click Process. And notice what it does. See that? So that is built-in software that takes raw JSON data and it converts it into a format that's much more English-like. I'm not saying does that make sense, but I'm just trying to explain a little bit of what's going on here. Now, again, if you look up on the screen, please. I'm going to go back to where I just was. And please look up on the screen. Notice, if I didn't want to put it into JSON format, see the other button? I could put it into XML format. All right? These are the two primary ways that data gets read into a system. Either by using JSON, JavaScript, object notation, or XML. The way that it's recommended to do it is by using JSON. All right? XML can be problematic. All right? Now, you could argue and say, you know what? I'm a Java Kotlin developer. I'm used to using XML because I use it in my activity main, my strings.xml, my colors.xml. Then you can do that. I don't have the code to do that, but you can do it. It can be done. We're going to go this route. So again, that right there, which ends up being wherever I put it that I showed you, kind of that garbagey looking stuff, we're going to basically do that, go through here ourselves, all right, and we're going to have to dig down to where we want to find something and eventually dig down all the way till we get to this forecast node right here. All right? And my hope is that at least what I just said made a little bit of sense. All right? And if it didn't, then you're going to have to just keep following along as we move along with the project here. So we went to weather.com. We needed an API, so I searched for Weather API. The one I came up with, because I liked the format the best, was the Weather Yahoo Developer Network. All right? Okay. So we copied the information. We just basically threw it very ugly-like into an editor. Then we went in and we typed in pretty JSON, and we grabbed the first one, which was the JSON formatter and validator. All right, pasted it back in and almost got what we started with. But the idea was to show you that you could take this information right here, run it through some software, and have it come out looking more like this. That's good news, but it's not perfect news. We still have to make changes to this so we can grab just what we need. All right? And we're going to be doing that in just a couple minutes. All right, one more thing, and then we're taking a break. That is, I want to show you what we're going to use to do this. All right? So, two things. First of all, we're going to be working with our Gradle file after the break. So what is Gradle? Well, if you look, I just typed in what is Gradle into Google, and if you look right here, this is from Wikipedia. I'm not going to read to you. You're all able to read yourselves. But for lack of better words, what's happening behind the scenes is it is quite possible that when you run a Kotlin app, you will have .kt files, .java files, .xml files, .svg files, and a bunch of other kinds of files. That's totally possible. That's totally plausible. In fact, most times you will. All right? So what Gradle has to do, it says it's a build automation system. So it is grabbing all of that stuff, it is collecting it together, and it is putting it into a format so when your program gets compiled and interpreted, the Kotlin compiler interpreter can understand what it is you're working with. All right? That's the idea. Now, if you look up on the screen here, you may have noticed this before. You may not have. I don't know. But if I go back and I look here, notice if I go back to my, in fact, let me go back to this. All right, if I go back to this, notice you know what your project window is. Okay? Everybody see that? You've worked with this before, but you may or may not have looked and noticed that over here, if you look along the side, see this? There's something here that says Gradle, and if I click that, that shows me the Gradle stuff that's in here. There's different things that we can go in and potentially work with. We don't have to touch any of those. I'm just going to close that up. I wanted to show it to you. But what we are going to work with after the break is we're going to come down where it says Gradle scripts. And where it says Gradle scripts, we're going to open up the build.gradle, the one that says module app. And that one. We're going to come in, and where we've got these dependencies here, we're going to add a couple extra dependencies. That's going to allow us to use software that has already been built for us to be able to take that JSON and convert it into a format we can and want to use. All right? And that software that we are going to use to do that, so you all see it, I'm going to do a Google search here, and I'm going to type in retrofit Android. And notice the first one that comes up says square.github.io/retrofit. You say, oh, you did that too fast. Just Google retrofit. All right? If you've never heard of Square before, I think it's a payment management system. It does a lot of stuff for you. A lot of people have it as clients. All right? And what we're going to do is it says here a type-safe HTTP client for Android and Java. There's good news and bad news here. The good news is we can use this. The bad news is it ain't written for Kotlin. It's written for Java. So we're going to have to convert it into what we want to use. Some of the stuff that you will type after the break, you're going to type in a line. If the longest line you ever typed in is like this, maybe a foot long, you're going to type in something that's more like 3 yards long. You're going to type in an unbelievably long line of code. Why? Because you have to do it to get it to work. All right? But we're going to work with this. And if you look up on the screen, because we're taking a break right now, but you'll notice if I'm right here, I'm on the introduction. And if I do a Control F and I search for dependency. All right? Here's some stuff with dependencies. That says Maven. We're not using Maven. We're using Gradle. So we're going to have to add a line like this that you see right here. And we're going to have to go back in and put it in on the bottom of our dependencies right there. Does that make sense? After we do that, you may or may not have noticed, this just came up. A little hyperlink to the right that says, I am now out of sync. These are the internal files that are going to be used when we attempt to run our program. Those internal files are now out of sync. All right? We're going to have to put them back in sync after we copy in our first dependency by clicking the Sync Now button. Nothing magical will happen. All right? So you can all do this, and then we'll take a break. I think we all need one. So you can go over to, if you can't read this, come on. If you go to right there, and you shouldn't need the http:// but you can put it in. That should be big enough, I think. Go. So if you go right there, if you put in, if you want to, put it all in. It doesn't matter. And you hit enter, that should bring you to this page. All right? Now, where I took this from, and I showed you where that was yesterday, where I took this from, the gentleman there recommends, you look up on the screen, please. When he did it, they were using version 2.3.0. Notice it's now 2.4.0. He recommends, and I'm going to do it, that after we copy in this line, we change the 2.4.0 to 2.3.0. Because sometimes things, you know this, you get a new version of the software and there's something in there that could potentially break something that you did in an earlier version. And if you think, well, I don't want to, then leave it at 2.4.0. All right, so I'm grabbing that line, I'm copying it to the clipboard, I'm going back to my program. In my Gradle scripts, close that. In my Gradle scripts, I double-clicked on build.gradle. Make sure you choose the module app 1. I found dependencies, which are right down at the bottom. I opened up a line, and I'm putting that in. All right? Why doesn't it look like the rest? Good question. But we're going to try that anyway, just like it is, except I'm changing it from 2.4.0 to 2.3.0. All right? Now, notice these all say Android implementation. I don't know if we have to type that in or not. Okay? All right. This one just says compile, so I think it'll be okay the way it is. We'll know because I'm going to click the Sync Now button. If I get an error, it didn't work. So it's running through its own thing. It's doing its updates, etc. And so far, at least, no errors. The Sync Now went away, and it's now part of my program. All right? And I want to show you, I promise this is the last thing, then we're taking a break, why this is important. If you look, you don't have to do this, but I want to show it to you. You don't have to do this. But I'm going to go and in my, of course this is hung now. Well, my system is hung up. So let's take a break. It's 1:37. Let's come back at 1:55 and we'll pick it up right here. All right? And of course, once I say that, then it comes back. But that's okay.
So I switched computers and now my Android Studio isn't messed up. I actually have an emulator. But I have these errors and I checked the sorry, I can do this for you, but it's the R, the reference and
When that happens, you know, again, I'm not saying you did anything. You probably didn't. Okay? But what I would do would be to go back in to build. Did you try doing a build? And you tried to clean it, and then a build, rebuild, and then you build the APK again.
It says I have a bunch of errors, but I haven't messed with anything. I don't understand.
I believe you.
About with like a match parent. It won't build or clean, or like the APKs fail because of the errors.
Again, normally, when that happens. The build and the rebuild and then the building the APK, fix it. Now, if you say, I tried that and it didn't, I believe you. No reason not to believe you. In fact, I'm going to do it twice because that's actually the recommendation is you build it, or you clean it, and you build it, and then you clean it, and you build it again. Good news is yours is going pretty fast.
I'm surprised that
Yeah. Well, which is yep. And it's like you said, it appears as any place you're trying to reference the R file. Now, I'm taking for granted you never opened that file, right? You never came in under Java and under here, or under here, or under here, etc. You never opened this file, and you never opened that file. Okay. Yeah, that's not helping much. All right. And the next thing we're going to check, just to be sure, is we're going to come over to help, and we're going to look at that's interesting. You don't have a check for updates.
I'm getting an update thing for the Kotlin, but like what you're getting.
Yeah, that shouldn't matter. That's just saying that the version has been updated. Yeah. But
I downloaded this 2 days ago.
That, yeah, so that should be that everything is up to date. Well, I'll tell you what. This won't fix at all your problem. But if you want to, what I'd like to have you do, if you don't mind, is to, if you've got a flash drive, let me have your flash drive. I'll copy mine, and I want to see if mine comes up on yours.
Okay.
All right. If the same error comes up, then it has to be something that's in the software. All right. Whatever that is, and I believe you. I believe that you installed it correctly. I don't know what happened, but if it comes up, if mine comes up, then somehow something got quirky in the program. I don't know what it is.
So just copy the weather app over?
Yeah, I'll copy my copy of it over if you've got a flash drive. And you can use, I just want to see if the one that you've seen on the screen already come up, if it comes up clean on yours. That's all. She's getting they're all R errors. You know, they're in her R file. Yet we went back and we cleaned it, rebuilt it twice. And when you try to build the APK, that's when she's getting all those errors.
I was getting those before I invalidated caches. So if you go to file.
Well, you can go ahead and try that.
Invalidate caches and restart. It's about 2/3 open.
So let's see, that's right here. So that's file. Where is it?
Invalidate caches and restart about 2/3 of the way down.
There.
Yeah.
And you tell it to do both, I take, right? So I don't think that's a bad idea to do it every once in a while anyway, because there's a lot of stuff that's happening here behind the scenes that I don't know what it is. All right. So why don't I'll copy mine over just to be sure, but you can try yours and see if that fixed it. Hopefully it does. It's what? Well, you have it on here now. If you want to try it on here, you can. See if that works or not. Pardon? Can you try to see if you can open it from the F drive without having to move it? You know, you'd have to close, well, whatever your drive is. You know, wherever it is on the flash drive. Mine is the F drive here. Yours could be something else. But you were able to close the one you were working on, right? Well, then I would do an open, but make it go to the flash drive, so you're opening the one from the flash drive. No, there's a chance there's nothing wrong with yours. If it's a software, why should you? I don't want you to get rid of yours or rename it or do anything. Renaming can have weird consequences with some of this stuff, yeah.
In your main activity, whenever you're referencing the button, like there's your there and the find view by ID and like in the
Angle brackets?
it says button.
When you reinstalled it, you said you just did it 2 years ago, or 2 days ago rather. It was 3.0, right? 'Cause, I mean, that almost sounds like with that kind of error that would have been like from an earlier version. Did you? Okay, I understand what you just said. Have you saved it and tried to run it? Because sometimes it'll give you weird errors like that, but when you run it, it'll still run just fine.